Hi, everyone. Thank you for tuning into the final episode of Boss Moms. And I have Elaine Lin Hering with me today. If you don't know her, she is the brilliant author of the wonderful book, which I have
Oh, we got
physically,
props.
Unlearning Silence. She has no idea I was going to do that. Um, you
Other than
know?
do the real deal. So
But I'm so excited that she was able to find time in her already like cracking schedule of things to do to just be here with us on a Saturday. And I know you're going to just learn a lot of amazing things about her journey and probably about yourself too, just from this conversation, because every time I talk to her, I learn something. So I know you guys are going to learn some things too. And so, Elaine, I'm going to have you, introduce yourself a little bit and then we'll just dig in.
I love it. I love it. So happy Saturday, everyone. And I think when you asked me about a Saturday, I was like, yes, because it is this balancing act of really trying to be present.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I'm at this stage where my kid is 7. So it's like, can we stretch for you to do some independent parallel play that you are safe? You can hear my voice. You can come on camera if you want, but it's going to be on YouTube. And then he's like, no.
I love that.
So he's going to do his homework right now. And we're at that stage. So this is a good stretch. But also, if you're tuning in and you're at your kid's soccer game and you want an escape from all those dynamics, hang out with us. And if you want to be present, don't be multitasking and just save that energy. Okay, I'm done with like my PSA now. I am unlike you, Abria, I am a recovering attorney, accidental author. I went to law school intending to be a litigator, fell into leadership development, had this big aha moment as a student of, wait, we can talk about things. What a novel idea. And really focused on the power of how do we communicate with each other, because working together, getting anything done, whether we're practicing in a firm, whether we're curing cancer, turns out you got to work with other people. Yep. And people are complicated. And so our ability to interact with each other, well or not well, impacts everything else. But actually, when I'm asked to introduce myself, I often go to, I'm a human. I'm a fellow human being on my journey, and excited to be on any part of your journey with you. And I often go there because I think in this social media world and the age that we live in, we forget that people are people. And whatever credentials I have, having gone to Harvard Law School, taught there, worked on 6 continents, sort of all these things. I mean, that's a part of the story, right? But I'm a mom. I'm a fellow human being, and I'm trying to continue to show up and make the world a better place. And sometimes it's hard, but it's better when we're in it together and remember that we're real people rather than just, I don't know, social media handles or anonymous threads in the internet. On the internet? Not sure which verb, but we'll go with it.
Actually, that was a preposition.
I knew you were going to know which part of speech it was. Okay, that is officially my favorite part of this conversation. Actually, the preposition.
And guys, that's why I'm single and not a mother.
My kid is actually learning parts of speech now.
Yeah.
And I was like, I learned that a noun was a person, place, or thing. Is that still what they're teaching? And I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Prepositions, that's like 3rd grade.
I know, it's so bad. um, I was a grammarian, and really pride myself in being able to slip between American English and British English very easily, including especially in emails. Um, I've been doing that a lot recently. And what ended up happening was I was working on a post for LinkedIn
Mm,
and I slipped a few U's
mm,
into words
mm.
that, I wouldn't normally do, um, and haven't done in years in the
Mm.
States. So it's really funny when I think about it.
Did the internet react?
It did. It
Okay.
did. And like I saw it when it happened to and was like, oh, what
Mm,
are you doing? Like
mm.
you're talking to Americans.
Having some fun, bringing a global perspective, keeping us on our toes.
But I will say I did have a moment where I thought, hmm, maybe I should start like switching up the way that I like use my words. I slipped dialect. I slipped, like the patois from
Yeah.
St. Vincent into my post sometimes. And people DM me and they're like, wait, what is that? I was like, oh, like just sound it out. It's like the sound of you sucking your teeth because you're mad, you know. Um but anyway, we digress. We needed some giggles before we get into the nitty gritty. But I promise you, there will be more giggles. And so, Elaine, thank you so much for introducing yourself. And I had forgotten that you used to be an attorney too.
Mm, mm.
I had forgotten
Do I hide
that.
it well?
You do. Like you usually don't mention it. I feel like I feel like most recovering attorneys that I know
Mm.
have a way of talking about when they used to be attorneys a lot. And I'm
Interesting.
not sure if they do it because like they know I'm like this kind of like bridge between the
Mhm,
two,
mhm.
or like I don't know if like I'm the common denominator there or this is just something that they do.
You
Um
bring it out of people. You bring it out of people.
but yeah, no, but that's so I forgot about that. See, so guys, see, I actually brought somebody who has way more qualifications to be here than
Oh,
we
we gotta break that down. We gotta break that down because there are so many places in life where it seems like we need so many qualifications. And to be present at a Scrappy Girl project, I think the qualification is that you're human and that you have a heart and that you care.
That's true. That's true.
Okay.
Yeah. I actually don't care about qualifications. For somebody who has like and to give an example, just before we move on, like I don't normally put the Esquire after my name. It
Mhm.
just feels like an extra thing.
Yeah.
And like there's certain marketing materials that I've had to do that for because like other people want to have like their 85 things, and then I'm like, oh,
Your
like I don't want,
acronyms.
and so like I don't want
Yeah.
to come off as like a kind of snob who, and so
Mm,
I end up just kind of like mirroring whatever people want to do when
totally.
I do like marketing. But like I remember for years people didn't think I was admitted to the bar because I just never changed. I never announced that I was admitted to the bar,
Yeah.
and I never changed that. And there's
Totally.
no photo of me being admitted to the bar at all
Yeah.
because I was admitted to the bar over Zoom during the pandemic.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
right. And
I
so
mean,
for me, like I like the anonymity of just like being able to show up in a room and just be
mhm.
Abria. Like
Yeah. I
I think
mean,
it
why do you think I start with "I'm human,"
mhm,
right? Because the minute you drop the Harvard bomb,
people get
then
weird
things change. It's weird. All the assumptions come into play. I mean, all the assumptions are at play anyways,
anyway.
let's be clear, but it's a
But
different.
new assumptions come.
Yes. And ones that I think get in the way of us seeing each other as human.
Mhm.
And what has really been interesting to me is that when I started being more public on LinkedIn or speaking from stages, there's a preconceived notion of what keynote energy is supposed to look like.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until and to be clear, I don't tend to have that Tony Robbins energy.
We
It's
know.
not me. But what has been really interesting to me is particularly in the world of AI, that my being human has been the differentiating factor. And the real mirror neuron connection with emotion and authenticity is something that you can't replicate.
Mm-hmm.
And then you throw on the piece of there are people coming up to me after I've spoken saying, like, "Can I hug you?" Totally
Mm-hmm.
cool. I'm a hugger. "Can I take a picture with you?" Cool. And also, I've never in my career seen someone see someone who looks like me actually be
Mm.
the keynote.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that has been so humbling, right? If I think
Mm-hmm.
about it, I've never seen one either.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad, but also such an honor. And my favorite are like the little old Asian aunties who are my
Mm-hmm.
mom's age who say, "I'm so proud of you." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks." Like I can hear that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so it's just an interesting spot to be in of you creating your own path even if you haven't seen it,
Yeah.
while fighting the preconceived notions, right? By nature of the fact that I'm not a white man, people assume that I'm a DEI speaker, which does a disservice to people who are
Mm-hmm.
actually have expertise in that area. Do
Yeah.
I care about diversity, equity, inclusion? Absolutely. Is that my area of
But
expertise?
that's not
No.
my jam. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not it's not like it's not my wheelhouse squarely.
Yeah.
Leadership,
Like I can,
communication, yes.
I can probably be on a panel for, but like, do you want me, going into like the deep theories related to diversity, equity, and inclusion? No, you don't.
You don't want me
You
to. There are plenty
like,
of
there are
people we
people
can
with
recommend.
PhDs in this,
Yeah.
like who've done the work. Like,
Yeah,
you don't want me showing up fudging it when you can have somebody who actually,
totally.
you know, has the expertise. No, and no, and thank you for saying that, because
Yeah.
that was something when I was launching Scrappy Go Project as a consulting firm.
Mm,
A lot of the advice was, oh, you need to make it women centric. Oh, you need to make it, DEI. Oh, you need to make it,
mm,
Afrocentric.
mm.
And then I'd be like, well, I don't want to do that because
Yeah.
I'm probably not going to be spending a lot of time on those particular nuances. Like,
Mm,
I'm going to be looking at it in the most kind of general way possible. And
yeah.
part of the reason for that is the same reason that, I think you use the word human to describe
Mm,
yourself. Because I think if I show up to a leadership development workshop and I'm talking to people who are leaders who generally do not look like me,
yeah.
and the first thing that I'm doing is telling them all of the things that I think are relatable to like a DEI
Mm,
specific audience, that's not helpful.
mm.
I need to be able to meet them where they are,
Yeah.
you know, and show them how, yes, diversity, equity, and inclusion is part of what they're doing. It doesn't have to be all of what they're doing.
Mhm.
But if they care about all of the other metrics that we know they care about, then this has to be a part of it as well, because we live in a global society
Right.
where you never know who is going to be that person that's going to be the tipping scale, or which
Mm,
company is going to be like the tipping scale for your company, for your business,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
What vendor is going to be attracted to you based on how you treat people that they care about, right? And so, Oh, good. So 15 minutes and we had a
Pretty
visitor.
good.
I actually love that we're ending this way because for our first episode,
Yeah.
my friend she like her 3-year-old like refused to go to sleep that day, and so
Oh my gosh.
and she has an 11-year-old, and so like who's also very energetic, and it was funny because like I think they lasted though like probably 40 minutes through, and then like they then
I
the day.
love the qualitative analysis of data points in this project as well.
But part of the reason for me doing this is because I want to show the full picture,
Mhm.
because I think a lot of times women who are, overachieving, doing very well in the public, in a on a public stage, right?
Yeah.
You know, in an executive role,
You can play.
just doing a lot, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes there's this I don't know, at least I felt like it was very much like in the 90s when I was younger, when I was
Mm,
still a kid,
mm.
and even like as I was, becoming an adult in, the early 2000s. I remember just there was this like separation of church and state kind of mentality when it came to parenting, and
Yeah.
so, and women felt like they needed to do that in order to survive in
Yes.
their careers, right?
Totally. Totally. I mean, there's so much we could unpack here. One of my
Mhm.
favorite posts recently was Ruchika Malhotra saying she went to a panel of successful female CEOs,
Mhm.
and the key message was for them to have the success that they had, they essentially had a stay-at-home spouse
Hmm.
who was primary parent. Now, if you don't have that setup, which I don't, then what are you to do?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I am a big proponent of the transparency of it, including how hard it is.
Mhm.
I am so grateful that virtual speaking is part of the mix because every business trip I take is a carefully calibrated, like, it makes wedding planning seem really easy. And I don't
That's
say
saying
that
a
lightly,
lot. Yeah, that's saying a
right?
lot.
Right, stakeholder management,
Mhm.
but it's still at this age, last flight out, first flight back. I never check a bag. I've got a backpack that fits under the seat in front of me so I don't have to fight for overhead bin space. I power walk on the moving escalators or run it to try to beat traffic. I mean, it's hard. It's totally worthwhile.
Mhm.
It is totally worthwhile to remind myself that there is another part of myself,
Yeah.
to send my message to my kid, particularly because he's my son,
Mhm.
that women work outside the house and impact the world,
Yeah.
and that I am not just here for you, even though I am here for you,
Mhm. Mhm.
right? And you are developing life skills like remembering to bring your lunch, grab your backpack. That is your responsibility.
Mhm.
And then the times that that doesn't happen, it's like we're learning. We're learning. That is
Yeah.
the big
Yeah.
frame.
No, I think that's so important, right? That's something like, although I'm not a parent, that's something
Mm,
like I remember I used to like talk to my own mom about, because I have a sister who is 15 years younger than me. And we always joke that like my mom, and I have an older sister who's 9 years older than me.
mm.
So the running joke in our household is my mom, had built-in babysitters.
Yeah.
You know,
Smart family planning right there.
you know and what I remember when I was, kind of like co-parenting my
Mhm.
younger sister with my mom, like she was like preteen teenager,
Mm.
and having to like explain to my mom like, no, like you have to set boundaries and let her understand that like you're not here for her beck and call. Like she's actually really privileged to have you as a parent because you're willing to go above and beyond for her and do all of the things that you're supposed to for her,
Yeah.
right? But
Yes.
you're not doing it because you have to,
Yes.
you know like like because you're way beyond the basic,
I
kind of
love
like the
that
basic
your
requirements of like
advocacy
parenting.
started early in your own home. Totally,
Yeah.
totally. I'll quote Pooja Lakshmin here,
Mhm.
right? That boundaries are not co-created.
Mhm.
And my experience of motherhood and observation of motherhood is that the industry around us, from the Instagram mommy feeds and
Mhm.
blogs, are a good mother is a self-sacrificial mother who puts
Mhm.
kids and kids' happiness and well-being before your own. I mean, that is the message you get from the time the child is conceived
Yeah.
in the healthcare system to when they send you home, right? It's like, how's
Mhm.
the baby doing versus how is mom doing? And so to give credit to moms that it is work to resist those messages, to have
Mhm.
the counter narrative to, if you don't have a daughter like Abria who's telling you that you don't got to do it all because it's your child's privilege to be mothered by you. How do you, and we should just replay that clip for people in case they don't have that voice.
Mhm.
Right? That is real work to resist.
Mhm.
And as part of my work around unlearning silence of how do you as a mom still have your own voice when it
Yeah.
seems like motherhood is and could be all consuming and there's social and societal pressure for it to be so because this end product
Mhm.
the air quotes for people who are just on audio just for the record, right? This product of the child is a reflection of you. When
Mhm.
I love that you mentioned another mom that you had on the show of their kid being you get who you get
Yeah.
in terms of kids.
Mhm.
And then that feels like the ultimate flexibility of who is my kid today and what do they need and what is this season, right? I
Yeah.
constantly have to claw myself back of I am in this season. I have to say 7 is way easier than 4, which is easier than 4 months because I got
Mhm.
a kid who has many strengths, but sleep has never been one of them. So he was the, like, 20-minute napper when he was a
Mm.
baby, so if anyone is going through that, I feel you so deeply in my bones, and you really wonder, how am I supposed to exist and function in this world when I need to keep this, fellow
Mhm.
human being alive.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like there is space for my own needs, goals, hopes, concerns, much less like impact in the world or
Yeah.
meaning and purpose other than this child.
Mhm. No. No, I mean it's so heavy, right? I mean, like, and we're just talking about like young children,
Oh,
like my mom, she's like in the position where she has 3 adult children,
yeah.
you know, and like we have all leaned on her in ways,
Mhm.
mostly because like I think she loves it. Like I always tell people, like my mom would gladly have me come and like stay with her,
Mm.
and like
We need your mom on this
you know, and
show.
she not gonna come.
Okay.
You know, my family is very anti video.
Mm, mm, 'kay.
You know, and it's funny. I was actually thinking about that
Mm,
earlier today, how anti video my family has been, because there have been so many moments just across the board in our lives that no
mm,
one has
mm.
recorded, even when we had a camcorder or 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 the ability, you know, like those like massive VHS camcorders. Like
Yeah,
we were
yeah.
privileged enough to have one of those when I was
Mm,
young.
mm.
Um, right through to now being able to do it on
Yeah,
your phone, like
yeah,
it's not second nature to us
yeah.
to do that. You know, even me doing these lives, like this is I know I look like a natural, but but some of my acting skills
I love it.
just come from being a West Indian kid. Like you just learn,
There's something
you
there.
just know how to be, you
Yes.
know.
Yeah.
Um like, you know, I remember as a kid like being ripped a new one just before we were having dinner guests.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I had to get
Yep.
my face right.
Yep.
Well, you know, like if one of those guests was able to pick up anything from me that
Mhm.
said, she's upset right now,
Mhm.
I was going to be ripped a new one after they left. And I didn't want
Oh my
that,
gosh, there's so much there,
you
right?
know?
Talk
Uh,
about talk about life skills that so many of us leverage now, of you
mhm,
can put on a good face, be present, show up as expected because of that training,
mhm,
and also what message did it send about what stays private
mhm.
versus public, what we talk about. Do we in my family, it was a, "Do you air the family's dirty laundry?"
And you don't.
You d right. It
You
was a
just don't.
rhetorical question. If that's the right grammar,
Yeah.
you'll call me
Yeah.
out. And we
Yeah.
learn all of that.
Mhm.
And I think as adults, we get the choice and have the agency to decide whether we wanna perpetuate that.
Yeah.
Because there is some I mean, life is hard.
Mhm.
Life is hard, and we all have the dark seasons, and the extra energy that it takes to put on a good face in those seasons is energy.
Yeah.
Now, I don't believe in airing all laundry to everyone, but are you choosing that, or is that just what we do?
Yeah. Yeah. No, ooh, that's a really good one.
And
Like,
that
are
choice
you
to me that
yeah.
choice to me is voice, right? How
Mhm.
do I wanna live? How much of my life do I wanna share publicly? Or
Mhm.
who do I wanna share my
Yeah,
life
do I
with?
even need to share it publicly, right?
No.
And and for me, it's funny you say that because I saw a post on LinkedIn recently where someone, and it was somebody I don't follow normally, it just, the algo just put her in my
Mm,
radar, but she was talking about the fact that she got a job offer,
mm,
but then they asked her to disclose whether she had had a disability or not.
mm,
Um, And in her post, she mentioned that like she had had a disability
mm,
before, but it was like no longer impacting her life because, because now she knows about this
mhm,
disability, she can like manage it.
yeah,
And it, like, I'm sure there's some impact because I
mm,
can't imagine there being no impact, but not the kind of impact that's going to, influence her ability to do the
yeah,
job that she was being hired for. But after she disclosed, they sent her a note maybe a week later telling her that there were issues with the board and now she couldn't be hired.
right,
And so like on the one hand, like, you know, and so she posed a question like, should she have disclosed?
mhm,
And so my knee-jerk response is, I'm only disclosing information about myself to anyone or any place that is need to know.
mm,
Like like if it's going to impact you
mm,
in a negative way, because for me, if you're getting positive effects of
mhm,
my awesomeness, you don't need to know just in case,
yeah,
I want to be a little bit lax and not
yeah,
do extra stuff.
yeah,
Like, so like there are parts of me that like people find out about
mhm,
just from being around me and they're like, wait, oh,
mhm,
you have that skill? And
yeah,
now it's like now I have to like share another component of who I am to explain why I have a random skill that like on its face I shouldn't have, right?
this
Because this is
is
not how I'm presenting.
I mean, it goes back to whether you put the Esquire after your name, or someone recently said, "Hey, we would put your JD in the marketing materials, but I don't see it anywhere. Is that intentional?" And I was like, "No, I'm matching the vibe, and
Mhm.
also if your norm is this, I have nothing against having a JD. I mean, it's legit,
Mhm.
right? We can
It's
prove it.
real,
It's
but
substantiated.
it's just not how I present
Yeah,
on an everyday
I don't
basis
go around
necessarily.
wearing a hat or a shirt that says JD. That's not my primary identity
Mhm.
in the world, but I think we're getting at a key piece here, which is you get to choose what you wanna share.
Mhm.
And I hear your line as need to know based on what you think the person needs to know.
Mhm.
And I can make both sides of the argument,
Mhm.
right? You don't need to know, and so I'm not gonna disclose because this world is real and there are ramifications. You don't know what people are going to do with the information or how they're
Exactly.
going to take it. And I
Exactly.
don't want to do that management. And at the same time, in terms of normalization,
Mhm.
what do I want to share? Right? What
Yeah.
are my stories, my life, my situations do I want to offer, much as we're having this conversation in a way
Mhm.
that might help support, encourage someone else
Yeah.
in navigating life? And you get to make that choice.
Mhm. And my
Right?
thing is like if and that was a question I posed to her. I was like,
Mm,
why did you feel like you needed to disclose? One, if
mm,
you feel like it's no longer impacting,
mhm,
right?
mm,
And then two, why do you believe that your disclosure is the reason and not
mm.
the reason that they're giving? Because they didn't, and obviously we know why they didn't come back and say that because you can't,
Yeah,
because you can get sued. But to me, it makes me realize like she may not have even felt safe in
totally.
the disclosure.
Totally. Which is a call to action for all employers.
Mhm.
Get your ducks in a row to the extent you can. Clear things with the board before you make the offer, right? Don't
Mhm.
jerk people around. And also, whether or not it is safe for someone to disclose depends on how we're going to receive it.
Yeah. Yeah. And more
Rant
important,
over.
and for me, like one of the important things is kind of like why are we so obsessed with the personal
Mm,
in a professional setting?
mm, mm,
You know, like I love the idea of having, healthy workplace cultures, but I
mhm,
actually think it's really unhealthy to use your workplace for a
mm,
lot, to be disclosing too much
mm,
of your personal
mm,
life and who you are in
mm,
that setting
mm.
because it really muddies the water. And like I have 22 years working experience, and I remember when I first started working, for those of you who don't like cursing, this word that I'm about to say is not a curse. It's a bodily function. It's the only word I've been allowed to use in front of my mom since I was a child
Drum roll. Drum
without
roll.
consequence. Don't shit where you eat,
Mm, mm,
right? Like that was something I learned, and a lot of times it was like in the setting of, oh, don't date somebody at work. Like that's how it
mhm,
would always be kind of framed. But I
mhm,
remember kind of like broadening my
mm.
definition of it and saying, well, do I really need the people that are reporting to me to know what I did this past weekend
Yeah.
unless it's going to help them do their job better?
So here's where I'd push. Because if we look at the environment, look
Mhm.
at the macro, right? Why is there this movement to disclose or share more of your life?
Mhm.
In part because there is management thinking or leadership thinking that says be more authentic, which is typically white male. Talk about your
Mhm.
kids and going to soccer with them so you seem
Mhm.
more human.
Yeah.
And there isn't the work for us to do is interrogating, is that advice right for me?
Mhm.
And what does authenticity, whatever that might mean, how does that apply to me? Where
Mhm.
I've my placeholder now is authenticity means leaning into and disclosing based on your own agency.
Yeah.
How much do you want to share? There is also, I'd argue, a human desire to connect with other people.
Mhm.
And then you get corporate messages that say, we're a family. And we could have a whole conversation about that, right? I don't really want to be family with you because that means there's all the dysfunction,
Yeah,
like the
like
random uncles and the dynamics there at work.
no, thank
And
you.
let's be really intellectually honest about what we're building here of the types of dynamics we're navigating and the debate of whether you can be friends with coworkers, whether people really have your back in the way that family might. So, the firm that I used to be part of, we made an intentional shift away from family to team
Mhm.
this is an employment relationship without the expectation of I've got your back all the time, no matter the circumstance.
Yeah.
And that mitigates the impacts when there is an inevitable fissure or someone has moved on, particularly if it's
Mhm.
at will employment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that like disillusionment of where are all my peeps? Where are my
Mhm.
people? I thought we were
Mhm.
friends. No, actually we're coworkers.
Yep.
And can you keep that clear for yourself? And
Yeah.
if you're someone who wants to share more of yourself because you enjoy talking about what you did over the weekend or your partner or your dog or whatever it is, if you wanna share that, awesome, right? I'm not
Yeah.
anti that,
But
but also not feeling like you have to.
yeah, no, I agree. And I love what you said about like the agency part, cuz my thing is I've worked with people that were oversharers.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I know way I've always been in that position where I just knew more about what was going on in other people's lives.
And just because
And
you know more about them doesn't mean you need to share more about you. That
exactly.
reciprocity.
And that was me. Like it was kind of like I always tell people I have like 10 to 15 stories I share, you know? And like
Yeah.
they're really complex stories,
Mhm.
and some of them are still kind of happening. So
Mm.
like I can draw from
Yeah.
those threads at
Yes.
any given time.
Yes.
But like the rest of the stuff, I'm like, that's for my,
Yeah.
I can't say inner circle. I got an inner triangle right now. But I lost a few points to make it a
Oh.
circle
Oh.
back in 2023. But I remember even being prepared for that
Mhm.
as like,
Mhm.
at that stage in the game, because I
Mhm.
remember the first time I went through like an overhaul of friends,
Mhm.
I was in my mid 20s, and
Yeah.
it was funny, one of my direct reports, who is like actually again a person who had retired from like working in finance and
Mm.
became like, like a salesperson at like a high-end fashion store,
Mm.
um, just to like keep her mind right. And I remember her giving me advice about the fact that, like, no, you're going to have to widen your vista. And sometimes
Mm.
you're going to have to lose friends. And, like, it's
Mhm.
no hard feelings. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be a huge thing. And,
Yeah.
like, for me, like, like this woman was like nugget central. Right. And so by the time that happened in 2023, and two of the people,
Mm.
they were people I had in my life, like one since I was 13, the other since
Mm.
I was 16. And
Mm.
so, 25 and 27
Yeah.
years, it's a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I remember when it happened, one of the things that probably made it very easy for me was the fact that although they were in the inner circle, there were still things that
Mhm.
I knew they couldn't handle, that they
Mhm.
never knew about me.
Mhm.
And so, like, the way they chose to end those relationships with me was confirmation of
Mhm.
why I
Yeah.
hadn't shared. So it was like it just kind of affirmed, like, oh, like you are fully aware of the people that you engage, you pay attention, and you make good and sound decisions, and don't allow anybody to tell you you don't. And so like and it was happening, all of that happened at a time when like just too many changes were happening in my life.
Yeah.
And so that grounded me, like
Mhm.
as like that final kind of stripping ended up grounding me, where I was like, oh,
Yeah.
you actually you get it.
So let me take this back to keynote mommy, because that's
Hmm.
what we
Yeah.
frame today as. As a keynote speaker, I am often telling stories because stories stick to
Hmm.
illustrate a point.
Yeah.
They're also curated, and there's a clear sense of what parts of my life am I going to share with you. And we're going to
Hmm.
laugh because
Yeah.
we've got to laugh in this day
Hmm.
and age. I also grew up seeing a former lecturer at Harvard Law School, particularly those of us who listen well. You have these parasocial relationships that form, whether it's on social media or in life. People think they know you, and that is part of engaging influence. It sounds way more manipulative than it is.
Mhm.
But part of being, I would argue, being responsible is what relationships can I actually hold?
Mhm.
And for me to be sane and for this work to be sustainable, who actually knows me? My bridesmaids actually know
Mhm.
me. My best
Mhm.
friend actually knows me. There are people who think they know me, and that's part of our relationship, and you don't.
Yeah.
Because I watch so many people get disillusioned from, "Wait, I thought this person was my bestie, and then they just
Yeah.
disappeared." Right? That's not
Mhm.
healthy in
Mhm.
terms of human interaction
Yeah.
either.
Mhm.
So, are we clear what relationships we hold? Do we have a team that knows us and supports us? Do we know where people sit in concentric circles
Mhm.
and people being in your life for a reason, season, or a lifetime?
Mhm.
And holding that accordingly, that you don't have to be besties for life to have an impact in someone's life.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
not taking on that relationship either
Mhm.
of how many relationships can I actually hold in
Mhm.
this season of life or in my lifetime?
Yeah. Yeah. And is it a worthy cause
Mm,
trying to sustain, you know, these like in-depth relationships with everyone? And
you
it
can't.
really isn't. It's like
You're only
impossible.
human.
Yeah, like it,
Yeah.
and so I think kind of like taking that pressure off is so important, that need to
Mhm.
kind of like I was talking to my mom earlier this week about how sometimes we do things for others to prove to them that we're better than them. And I
I'm like,
know,
"Wait, dude,
yeah,
who has
and
energy for that right now?"
and so yeah, and no, and to me it's like so subconscious. It's almost like this person is not a good person, but I've been friends with them forever. And because I've managed to be a good friend to them for an extended amount of time, like that somehow makes me a better human being. And, and so we were just having this conversation
Mm.
randomly because, like, we can't talk about regular things when we have breakfast, apparently. Um, and she kind of looked at me like she was having an aha moment,
Mm.
and and I told her, I was like, I know sometimes when you deal with me, like you think like I'm just like really hard about like my boundaries, but I'm not going to force myself to do these like additional things because I don't think I need to do that.
Mhm.
Just from my vantage point. And I really don't stress about what other people are doing. Like, go live your life. Like, that's up to you,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And I think really as a keynote speaker and as a writer, you're kind of having to play that like boundary of
Mhm.
I need to engage, right? I need to be present. I need to
Yeah.
engage, I need to be connecting, right?
Mhm.
While at the same time recognizing, okay, what parts of me need to be connecting?
Totally.
What stories do I need to tell?
Mhm.
What stories do I need to carry with me, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what stories, or moments, is it okay to just say, you know what, that was a moment, we're moving on, you
Yeah.
know, and kind
And
of,
for that, because I see people wrestle with this of, if I'm not sharing everything, am I not being authentic and I'm not being
mhm,
real?
mhm,
It goes back to our definition of authenticity, not just because we both love a good, clear definition.
mhm,
But if authenticity is choosing your own agency, then you choosing what you wanna share, when you wanna share, for what purpose,
mhm,
but being really conscious that those are choices rather than just the defaults of what you see or the
mhm,
pressures that you feel or succumb to.
yeah,
This
yeah,
is where actually being a mother has been really helpful, because when I'm in mom mode, I'm in mom mode,
mhm.
and we're gonna talk Pokemon until until I put a stop to it because I exercise a boundary to maintain my own sanity. Because I want to be present in
Mhm.
that relationship
Yeah.
and intentional in that relationship and the impact that it has on that generation.
Mhm.
Doing any of that, I have come to learn, requires me being okay myself,
Yeah.
right? Which is, before we jumped on here, I was asking you what nourishes you, what pours into you, because that's different for
Mhm.
everyone, but it is also doing that while simultaneously resisting the
Mhm.
messages that you've got to be on all the time for everyone, doing everything. You can't.
Yeah.
It's not possible. So where are you choosing to show up?
Mhm.
And what are we going to do today? And let that be enough.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's so important. And then also for me, like I always think about consequences,
Mm,
and so I count the cost
yeah.
of everything I share.
You
you
can
know,
anticipate it.
I for me it's like I just count it like and
Yeah.
for me it's like I always think what's the worst case that like people like I know we live in like foo-foo land where we want to believe everybody has good intentions even if there is negative impact,
Yeah.
repeated negative impact of their behavior. But for me my mindset is I can share this information and this person can do whatever it is they
Mhm,
choose to do with it.
mhm,
They can twist it, they can
mhm.
they can misinterpret it, they can do whatever they want. And so I have to be okay
Yes.
with all the possibilities
Yes.
before I share. And I think that's part of being authentic too. I
Yeah.
think a lot of times, you know, the idea that like we already know we live in a world, like you said, like we know that there are issues in
Yeah.
this world. We know that
Mhm.
people are complicated,
Yeah.
right? And if we're all people, like we're all actually very complicated people with so many idiosyncratic behaviors that
Yes.
sometimes change in any given day.
Yeah.
Like I remember not liking carrots for like a week. Okay. But like it's like my one of my favorite vegetables,
Oh my gosh.
And so
Oh my gosh. Mhm.
so there's that, right?
Yeah.
Um, but I think, part of being authentic and part of this like authenticity lesson is
Mhm.
that we need to recognize that as we are all being our authentic selves, the recipients of our authenticity are also going to be their authentic selves.
Yeah.
And we kind of have to, and to me, it's kind of managing the relationships
Totally.
that, within that space. And I feel like this is a good segue into unlearning silence. Because one, we're talking about different types of voice, right? Like on the one hand, we're using silence as a way of voicing
Mm.
what we want or don't want, right?
Mhm.
But also like actually using our words, our images. Hey, um, and kind of like using all of the parts of who we are to either, assert voice
Yeah.
or not, right?
Totally.
And so kind of like creating like space for ourselves to choose on any given day in any given moment how we're going to kind of like get it out there, right?
Totally. And
Yeah.
this, to me, let's go to definitions.
Mhm.
Voice is not just what you say or don't say in a meeting.
Mhm.
Voice is how you move through the world,
Mhm.
right? What are you going to do? What are you going to not do? How are you going to show up? Are you going to hold the door for someone as you walk through? I mean, literally at the grocery
Yeah,
store,
yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That has an impact on someone else. Anything we
Mhm.
do or say has
Yeah.
impact.
Mhm.
And often voice can get really conflated and have this really narrow definition of, I've got to speak in this meeting or else I'm not using my voice.
Mhm. And that's not
That's
true.
why we've talked so much about agency here today,
Mhm.
right? Voice is
Mhm.
how you move through the world. How are you going to move through? Because if you're not moving through intentionally, you're defaulting to the expectations that other people have of you
Yeah.
or the norms that are pre-existing. and you are essentially giving up your power to influence and shape the world around you.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I'm so glad you talked about like how broad it can be, because,
Mhm.
you know, I have been in those rooms where people tried to get me to speak when I clearly didn't want to. because I knew the words that were going to come out
Yeah,
were going to create rift. And so
totally.
to me it's like, we all know what the elephant in the room is. Can
Yes.
I don't have to be the one to point it out every time.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing, right? If we are not intentional about our own voice and we are just responsive to other people's expectations, they co-opt our voice.
Mm-hmm.
They co-opt our power, including, oh, I don't have to say something because Abria will, or
Yeah.
we'll let them be the fall person because
Mm-hmm.
they're used to it, they're good at it, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It is our work to try to influence other people. It is their work to try to influence us. It is also our work to decide when and where do I want to be susceptible to that? Do I want to
Mm-hmm.
play into that? And that forced voice of you've got to say this here, I would argue is just as damaging as silence,
Yeah.
right? Not being able to say anything at all, which is why the difference between silence that is additive or strategic and silence that is
Mm-hmm.
oppressive or damaging is agency. Are you choosing it?
Mm-hmm.
Including, as we were talking about earlier, if you want to share,
Yeah.
why are you sharing? And if there's a good reason for you to share, then fantastic. It
Mm-hmm.
comes with whatever the world is going to do and react to it. But if it's worth it to you,
Then go for it. You
yeah.
know. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's almost like choosing when you're gonna, sound your own battle cry,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
rather than jumping into somebody else's war,
Yeah.
based on some like false notion of
Yeah.
allyship
Sure.
or whatever,
Sure.
or if I jump on this bandwagon, I'll get to keep my job, which many people are finding out is not the thing anymore.
And the key piece is, do I remember I have a choice?
Yeah.
Because so often the choices don't seem great, number one.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, we forget we have a choice because I'm just
Mm-hmm.
supposed to do what my manager or my mom or my whoever tells me
Yeah.
to, versus, no, I am choosing this with awareness of the consequences I can anticipate, but also that, and I talked about this in chapter 3 of my book, of the consequences not just for today, but also of tomorrow and of the days to come.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that we tend to focus on the short-term discomfort today, or who do I have to deal with today, versus things don't usually change for the
Mm-hmm.
better if we don't do anything about it.
Yep.
But what are you choosing
Mm-hmm.
today, tomorrow, and in the days to come? And just because you chose something yesterday doesn't mean that your choice tomorrow or in the days to come have to be the same either,
Yeah.
right? Is it okay to change? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It's
called growth.
imperative. It's imperative,
It's called growth. It's called learning.
Yeah, no, that's so important. I think like, and long-term consequences are so important, right? Because so many times, we can make choices that impact that, like we're just thinking about, oh, this is going to get me, and I'll use LinkedIn again,
Mm.
where so many people crash out on LinkedIn
Mm.
and then they go viral,
Mm.
but they still need a job.
Mm.
And now this viral post is everywhere
Mhm.
that a potential employer can see, right?
Sure.
And so on the one hand, you get like the dopamine levels going
Mhm.
really high, like,
Yeah.
you feel really good because you got like, I don't know, 100,000 impressions
Mm.
on a post,
Mm.
but you're still worried about whether or not you're going to be able to pay your rent,
Mhm.
you know?
And some people may argue that that post is gonna be a filtering mechanism for the right employer going forward.
Mm-hmm.
So I can get on board with that.
Yeah.
To me, it goes back to, why are you, if we're
Mm-hmm.
gonna be in LinkedIn, why are you there in the first place?
Yeah.
Are you anything? Why are you at this networking event? Why are you in this group? Why are you on
Mm-hmm.
LinkedIn? If you have a clear why, it actually drives all of your decisions that
Mm-hmm.
flow from there,
Yeah.
including, are you really trying to go viral? Because maybe that's not the point. Maybe the
Mm-hmm.
point is to be part of interesting conversations. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
the point is to meet people that you wouldn't otherwise meet.
Yeah.
And those are all really good reasons too, even
Mm-hmm.
if the social pressure is there of viral posts
Mm-hmm.
equals
Mm-hmm.
success, right?
Yeah.
You've got to own that definition for yourself, or you get caught up in the rest of
No.
it.
Yeah. And, and because I love a good rebut, I'm going to say, for the people that are filtering out jobs,
Mhm.
like, if you're not in a financial position to be filtering out jobs,
Mm,
are you really filtering out jobs, or are you just lying to yourself
mm,
so that you can, maintain a facade that's not serving you short term or long term? I think because there are like real consequences. Like I remember, like you and I have talked about this before, about the people who don't speak up
mm,
in meetings, who might be in a position to and choose
mm,
not to, right?
mhm,
And like there are real consequences of
mhm,
speaking up. Like people have mortgages, people have
mhm,
children, people have
mhm.
extended families that are relying on their
Yeah.
earnings, right? And so me asking someone who really is just my colleague
Mhm,
to crash out on
mm,
my behalf is like, it sounds good on paper,
mhm.
but is this something I'm willing to do long
Yeah,
term for someone, if
yeah,
especially if I'm not in the position to do so? Because the assumption as well is, oh, if you're making a lot of money, that
mm,
you're saving a lot of money. But
mhm,
as we know from especially like historically disadvantaged, cultures, that money is spread so thin, right?
mhm,
And
mhm,
so like a kind of like putting the onus on the individuals who can't actually like make a conscious decision to do that without these like really egregious consequences
mhm,
is something I find that happens a lot in real
mm.
life online. Like there's so
Yes.
much judgment, right? And I know what you're gonna say. You're gonna
What
say
am I gonna
it
say?
all boils down to choice. You know, but because in the end, like it's a choice, right?
It
But
is a
to me
tr
it's like, why, but I want you to say what you were gonna say
Yeah,
instead of
I'm
having me
thinking
usurp your choice
yeah, yeah, yeah.
statement.
I'm thinking this is why chapter 3 of my
Hmm.
book, Unlearning Silence, is a whole chapter,
Yeah.
right? Because there's so much nuance and both
Hmm.
and to it.
Yeah.
Because you also need to live with the consequences of your choice to say
Mhm.
something or to stay silent.
Mhm.
And if we each have one life to live, are you making choices that you're okay with?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's good.
And only
And
you get to, yeah, I'll end with what you prided me for. You get to choose.
and so like, and I actually did that on purpose because I want to talk
Felt like a
about,
leading question,
yeah,
Abria.
it really was. And part of it is like, so Elaine keeps referring back to chapter 3 of her book. And
Mhm.
I'm gonna tell you what that chapter is
Hmm.
called so I can entice you to buy the book, because you really need to read it. When silence makes sense, right? And I've had a lot of moments in my life when silence makes sense. But chapter 5 of part 1, like
Mm.
part 1 chapter 5, how we silence others.
Mhm.
When I read that chapter the first time, I was like, ooh, this chapter's about you, girl. And
I will neither confirm nor deny.
and so like in a way, when I said I know what you're about to say, you're going to
Mm,
talk about choice,
mm,
this is a form of silencing that can sometimes happen,
mhm,
right? And so like it's funny, like when I like in my head I was like, should I go for it, should I go for it? And then I did it because I wanted to see how much pushback he would give me.
mm,
And because we have a relationship, like a working relationship where I think like we kind of feed off of each other when we interact, like you kind of went for it because it made sense based on the topic and what we're going for here in this discussion. But you know, this is something I really wanted to kind of highlight about the book, Unlearning Silence, is like so many times we don't realize how our behavior, our words,
Mhm.
or the lack thereof, actually influences another person's choice to be silent. And so I hope that this was a brilliant time for you, because I feel like I need to go back and read Unlearning Silence after after
Mhm.
this episode. Um, but more importantly, I think it's so important when we are engaging. I think about in the workplace with moms, the person who is positioned to create an environment where moms feel safe
Yeah.
enough to speak about their different needs that they may
Mhm.
have on any given day. If you can create a space where you're silencing them just based on how you choose to live your own life and how you choose to manage your own family, right? And so any last words on that like completely new topic I just threw in there?
We've got the countdown clock
Yeah.
right here.
Mm-hmm.
The final phrase is adding to what you said. It's both how you show up, it's also the environment that you've designed.
Yeah.
Your policies, your practices, do they support or do they silence the people who are present? And that no policy is neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So looking at who does this policy or practice silence and who does it support? And at the end of the day, each of us has one life to live. So really, how do you want to live it, and living it well? And we're going to land there because we're
It's
switching into
time to
mom
go.
mode.
No,
It's time.
it's
It's time.
definitely time to
We have a
go.
counter argument that it's 11:01, and you said, Mom, that we would end at 11.
So the book is Unlearning Silence. The keynote mommy is Elaine Lin Hering. She's on LinkedIn. Follow her. She always got some juice that you need to be drinking. And you can take that however you want.
That's
Uh,
my new tagline. I got some juice you need